Hey, welcome back. Today, we're going to talk about something that you know is very near and dear to my heart, community. And you know that a community is nothing without the people in it. Working together, being together, knowing each other. Well, do I have a treat for you? Our next guest is all about that. My name is Vin Dacquino. His name is John Nassivera.
Thank you so much for having me here today,
John, it's a pleasure. It's a treat having you here because you have really been a member of your community. And you promote people working together. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Okay, Vinny, I actually grew up in a small town in upper New York called Hudson Falls, which is actually the setting of the book.
Where we actually met.
And that's where we actually met, at a farmer's market right there in the center of town, beautiful town. And I spent my early education years there, and then I also moved on to a professional life in education. I spent 30 some odd years in New York City as an educator.
Wow.
One of the things I discovered throughout life, and right initially from my mom and from the community I grew up in, is that we're each born with a special talent and multiple talents. And throughout life, part of the things our journey is to discover what those talents are and how those talents can complement the good work that our neighbors are doing and bring a positive nature to the communities we're in and also globally.
I like to hear you say that because many people do believe that they have talents, and many of those people believe that those talents have to do with bettering yourself. And that's true, but it's bettering yourself and bettering others.
Yes, that is. It's very evident that we're all born with very special talents, and part of the journey of our life is they sort of reveal themselves subtly sometimes, and they keep coming back.
And it takes a while for those talents to develop.
And what do I do with it? Once I discovered it, what do I do with it? You know, how do I use it? How do I manipulate it for the better? And a very important thing about what you said is this word kindness. And kindness is you're really doing well to others when you give to others, but even as importantly is you're really doing a positive and giving back to yourself in the act. And that act can be an enormous amount of a variety of things.
Okay, so John, here's going to be the real question. You've written a book. It's called The Garden Raid. How does that book fit in with who you are and what you believe in?
So this is a fictional novel, short fictional novel for middle grades 3 to 6. And it really relates to my life and life experiences and growing up in Hudson Falls, New York as a setting.
So you've combined your background, your early days, with this book. It's not about, this is not a biography.
Not at all.
Not an autobiography.
And it's fictional, as I said.
It's fictional,
It's really about the lessons learned in life, sort of what we were just speaking about, that your talents reveal themselves, and they reveal themselves throughout life. So the setting is actually Hudson Falls, New York, which represents small town USA. It can be found anywhere in the United States.
Just happens to be about Hudson, but it's really...
Yeah, and that's the relationship to my life experiences. That's where it comes in, and not to be a true story. And in this small town, the setting also is 1967. And that's important in reference to the context of the book, because we know life changes. We're in a constant mode of change and evolution, right? And changes always brings positive things, but there's also a memory of all those fond things that we had and lessons learned. And lessons learned.
Many of the people in our audience are writers. And, you know, I've said to them many times that the idea when you're creating a book is to kind of reach inside and to use some of your past experiences. Doesn't necessarily have to be verbatim. I always tell the story about the little boy who came to me and said, Mr. Dacquino, how can I write an exciting book if my life is boring? And I say, listen, don't necessarily write about what is, write about what if. So you could take real places or real people and you can mix them throughout your story. doesn't have to be about them, but they can be there. And that's kind of what you did, right, John?
Yeah, it's about making those connections and building relationships. So in the struggle of trying to make friends in 4th grade, the main character, John, is approached by his older brother in 6th grade. So now here's an opportunity. His brother comes.
Grade.
Yeah, but he's 6th grade is the big dogs in elementary school.
I know, I taught it for 30 years.
You know? So John has this opportunity in the story, initially in the very beginning, to accomplish friendship by going and camping out in a neighbor's backyard with his older brother. But little does he know that his older brother and friends are going on their annual garden raid of Old Man Varney's garden, which is guarded by a demon dog. So subtly, you know, these life choices, John wants to make friends, yet there's a little conflict there in reference to, well, this isn't
Peer
probably
pressure.
the right thing to do.
There you go.
But it is my only opportunity.
Yeah.
You know, where do I go? And I think we're faced with those types of choices. And they're not malicious choices. They're just as, if you look at real life, there's a balance in making choices.
And temptation finds its way into you almost every day.
Yeah. So he does fall to the decision, the choice to go on the garden raid. And it goes a bust, you know, in the first few chapters. But what happens then is that he's subtly faced with these life choices. So one example is Mr. Varney has been removed from the house. He has a medical incident, and then there's this choice: well, we should take care of the dog. And all of his friends are, well, you know, that dog tried to eat us last night. That dog's a vicious demon. You know, what are you, crazy?
So things turn around. First, they are, quote unquote, the enemy. They're raiding this man's private property, his garden. It's wrong.
Yeah.
And there's a dog who's going to eat them if he can, because they're not supposed to be there. And then the old man has a medical situation, and the dog that was the enemy is now in need of their help. Is that where we are?
That's where we are.
Okay.
And without revealing too much, there are some of the lessons that I learned in growing up in Hudson Falls, and these are common lessons, they're global lessons. Things aren't always what they first seem to be.
Yeah,
Maybe
that's right.
that dog wasn't a mean demon. Maybe that old man wasn't a mean old man. Right? And they come across these situations. There's other characters.
Yeah.
with
Sometimes we're forced to do things to protect who we are.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's a subtle message I'm trying to get over, just that when we perceive things, we should give them the time to get to know people, look into the real context of the situation, and realize that everybody is really in a good place trying to do good things.
There's
and
more to
maybe
people than what you first see.
And that's one of the little subtle lessons. So,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
also in making friendship comes over time.
Yeah.
Right? And it's developed through this journey of building a relationship and interactions.
So these kids raid the garden, and then he has, what, a heart attack?
So what happens is, if I were to look at the cover again, there's a few subtle messages in the cover, and I'm also the illustrator. And what you'll see is the pumpkin actually represents the challenges of life. And when you review the cover, you can see that the pumpkin is laying on top of John. It's almost like that Wizard of Oz and the witch under the house, which represents, struggle and choices. And then there's these hands that are different colors on the pumpkin.
Yeah.
And they represent, when you get a little help from your friends, you can achieve anything.
Yeah.
So,
And that's huge, and that's right. Sometimes we do need a little help from our friends.
and I think that's a good segue into part of this personal journey for me in writing, because I'm not really a writer. This is my first try at it.
Oh, wow.
I'm very happy with the outcome.
Great
is
first
that
try.
One thing I've learned through life, and it was taught to me actually from the front porch of my house, which is very significant to America, because in American architecture, if you notice, especially in small towns, the front of the house is the front porch. And that front porch was actually designed to bring people out of the house, to be part of the living portion of the house, but outside where you're in the community. And if you look back to the setting of 1967 and prior to that in the United States, that's where jokes were told, that's where songs were sung.
Newspapers were read, families gathered.
Lessons learned.
When I first looked at my house, I fell in love with the fact that it had fireplaces, and the rooms were big, there was a little stream that ran in the back, but there was no front porch. And I almost didn't buy the house. And we put a cement patio with a little gazebo. We put a table and chair. We made our own front porch because to me, the front porch is the center of the family. It was, and I think you said this once before, and I love this phrase, where you said it's an extension of the family in the house. And that's it is, it's an extension.
Absolutely. It actually puts you in a physical position
Yep.
that you are involved and engaged just by your physical position with the community. And if you look at a lot of small towns, you have the sidewalks, so people are coming out of the community,
Yeah.
they're walking, you're right there, you meet your neighbors,
Yep.
right? You have
Yep.
that conversation about what's going on politically. You even have those neighbors that are really an extension of your parents. You know, it's difficult to get down the street
Yeah.
and not behave because, when you were younger, because you would be corrected by those
Yeah.
in a
People-
gentle
people
and
were
positive
watching
way. But they were actually taking care of you. So it really created a sense of community, and that was the purpose of the front porch in America.
Yeah.
It's very unique to our nation.
It is. Recently, I went to England, and when I was in England, that's one of the first things I noticed, that the houses are built like on the sidewalks, and they have little backyards, but the backyards are where people gather, away from each other. You almost can't even
Yeah.
see each other. And when I commented them, I said, whoa, there's no front porches. And he said, there's no what? I said, front porches. Where do you sit to talk to your neighbors? He said, we don't talk to our neighbors. We don't sit and talk to our neighbors.
Yeah.
I said, we do. And when they came to America, they got it immediately. And I took them up to Cold Springs, New York, and they saw people having coffee together in the morning, sipping coffee. Even some of the restaurants there had front porches, and people were eating on the front porches. They said unheard of and wonderful.
Yeah, it's very purposely designed to create community,
Yeah.
which brought it to the next place is that my mom would sit on the front porch.
Yeah.
And all the neighborhood kids, and you know, I'm one of 7, we'd all be on the front porch.
Yeah.
And she would tell stories. And she would tell stories where we were all the characters. And there would always be a struggle. And we always came out on top. And when I reflect back on that, I didn't realize it at the time, but she was teaching me life's lessons.
Yeah.
You know, that one, things aren't always what they first seem to be.
Right.
You know, always be open to people. Diversity is an excellent and a beautiful thing. 2 is that friendships do take a long time. They're developed.
Yep.
They're not just given.
Yep.
And that 3 is that, you know, we do have gifts to give to others.
Yeah.
And we do that. We help the whole community. Which then brings me to something I'd like to talk about is the mission that I hope to do in this journey and through writing and illustrating is to create community one story at a time and do that by complementing the good work that our neighbors are doing so the good continues. And you're a prime example of that.
Yeah.
Social awareness is huge.
what this
in
show is
changing-
all about.
Right. And social awareness is huge in changing anything, globally even, not just small town, not just national, but globally. And when people start becoming aware of issues or becoming aware of positive things and they start talking and they get innovative and creative and they engage in it, then a huge positive change
Yeah.
becomes. You know, so
Know your neighbors.
yeah, and so part of this journey is how many different ways can a book come off the page to complement someone like yourself or a musician down the street that just opened up an old telephone company building, right? And he hopes to create community through music and the arts and theater, or a farmer's market where we met,
Yeah.
right? Which
Yeah.
the intent of the farmer's market is to showcase all the good things that people are doing in
Yeah,
the
I mean,
community
it-
and bring the community together.
It was absolutely wonderful. You know, when I went to this market, I saw local merchants with their goods, including you with books. But there was a guy with fish, and there was another guy with meat, and there was another guy with tomatoes, and who was there but neighbors talking to each other, talking, my shop is down here and this is what I do and you should come in, and I knew your cousin and I knew your uncle and I knew your father. And it's people being with people. It's social activities. When I was growing up, our neighborhood friends, our little group of kids, I don't want to say gang, we weren't really a gang, we were a bunch of kids and hanging out on porches, and the mothers and fathers of those kids were across the street sitting on that porch and that porch and that porch. I was a paper boy. And when I delivered the paper, I walk up to the porch and hand them the paper, and they open it and they read it. That's in many ways lost, and we need to bring it back.
I would, I've contemplated on that. Is it really lost, or has it just evolved to something else? So is the front porch is still physically,
to computers.
It's still, well, but I think we can also look at the front porch still physically exists, but we don't see our neighbors as much, and we don't utilize that. And that's just because things are in a constant rate of change. Is the internet, or does it provide us the opportunity to globally have a big front porch? That's something to think about. But in reference to using the book to try to, on this journey to discover, how can I complement the good works? I've been very fortunate and blessed. One meeting you, one meeting a gentleman, Jonathan Newell, up at the Hudson River Music Hall, who's creating community by performing arts. And we've joined together, and he's presenting a December performance arts program for the 4th and 5th graders up there, free after school, to come and work with local musicians and theater people. And these are all people, like we were talking,
together
with talents that are sharing their talents to better not only themselves but their community. The farmers market was another, Joel Timms at the farmers market, creating that to bring everybody together. And I've had school visits. All these opportunities are brought to me, present to me, to be able to have the conversations like we have, just kindness. Realizing
understanding,
that,
getting to know your neighbors, getting to understand the difference in people's passions. This show evolved that way. We were originally Let's Talk Writing, and we brought writers in, and writers talked about the books they were doing, and then we said, you know what? We need to spread. We need to not only talk about writing, but talk about various passions. People have passions. Sometimes it could be a garden. Sometimes it could be writing books. Sometimes it could be raising pets. All sorts of things. We've had so many wonderful organizations on this show. People reaching out to people. And it's a wonderful message. We do not live in isolation, nor should we.
Right. We weren't born to,
No, we were not born to. And we're discovering that the world is a whole lot smaller than it used to be. We met these friends in England online. My wife was playing a game called Words with Friends. Oh, my God. The friends were from England. So we can now be in touch with people around the world. We have many more opportunities. And as you say, they may not be exactly the way it was when we were growing up, but there's still opportunities. Right. And we have an obligation to find those opportunities to be one.
And the essence of who we are and what it used to be.
That's right.
Still exists. The essence hasn't gone. The front porch may be, as you just said, the internet, because I just got a little example where you're playing a game and
it's a different community, and it's an international community. And even just the concept of that. When we were kids, an international community meant that we got together with some of the kids from the other neighborhood.
Yeah.
That international was going from north to west, the west side, crossing the tracks. Now we're talking about crossing the ocean.
So can you imagine how much good is being done globally? Yeah. And now, as you said, everybody has access to this global goodness. How can we complement that, and what can we learn from it? And
great message,
I think
John.
when we
it really is.
I think when we just that core part of us about love, needing to be together, built to be together, kindness, joy. If
should
we
be
focus
no
on
embarrassment
that,
about saying, I love my neighbor. You need to love your neighbor, and you need to understand that.
And it takes work.
It takes work.
And it's really not hard work if you just
Yep.
stay that positive
Open
route,
your eyes,
use
open
your
your heart.
talents, right? We all have gifts to give.
Yeah.
And when you give gifts,
True.
you're also receiving back.
True. And there's so many people out there who have, we started this whole conversation with, people have gifts, they have talents. And to send someone to the grave without giving them the opportunity to use their talents and gift is a sin. It's just a shame to waste a talent. And so many people go to the grave without ever having the opportunity to be who they are.
Yeah, I think it first starts with accepting who you are.
Accepting
internally.
who you are and be willing
Probably
to
the
share
hardest
it.
piece of it.
Yep.
And once you can do that, and please, I think everybody should feel very comfortable in it's just do it. Because every person I meet brings joy, and I just yourself. I would have never thought back when I was in 4th grade at Margaret Murphy Elementary School in Hudson Falls that I would be sitting here on TV cameras talking about my life experience that happened in a way that it makes connections and builds relationships.
And that's key, to understand that it doesn't matter what color you are, what religion you are, where you were brought up. People are people too. Doesn't matter what your background is. We need each other. And communities are diverse. And we have to accept diversity. We have to accept the fact that almost all of us are different, but we're also the same.
Yes, and you know, I think the subtle messages in the books are a reality of all those people that touched me throughout my life and gave me those learned lessons.
So you were a teacher for many years.
Yes.
And at what point, John, did you say, oh my God, I'm on a mission?
I think it was revealed to me back even at the time of, as expressed in the book, when I was younger. I think the nature of teaching puts you in, you find yourself in teaching because the reality is you help others. You're giving to others.
And you realize
may
you're
not
on a
realize
mission.
it at first. You know, it might be a profession that you're exploring because you enjoyed it, but once you're there, you make, you know, there's 5 things that start to happen. Is you start making connections, and that connections through students. You start building relationships. Is one of the most important things in education. Is when we build relationships, we can accomplish just about anything. And then there's those central purposes, and it's just not around learning, because you were an educator also. Is that, you know, when students come to school, there's a lot of life stresses that have to be dealt with first before I can get busy in the classroom. But finding that common purpose is success in helping each one of those students grow. And then there's that act of service, you know, and that act of service extends not only from the teacher to the students, but the students back to the teacher and to their community. And then taking the time to have gratitude and celebration. You know, every day in that classroom, every day in the school that I created, I would find exceptional successes, you know, that I was so happy for the kids. And you really have to, one of the best things, even in coaching, is reflective of, here's your successes. You have been very successful. It's very important. In reference
And
to
it's important to help people realize that they have importance. And
we all do. We all do. That's why we're here.
And to help people find that and appreciate that, sometimes we forget that the smile that we put on a person's face in 3 minutes that it takes to do it may be the only smile that person has the entire day. And it takes a moment to say, hey, good to see you. Some people really don't think it's good to see them. And there's people who are walking around depressed, lonely, and it doesn't take all that much.
Yeah, it's a helping hand. It's a smile, it's a hello.
To give someone a smile they would not have had otherwise.
And part of being social beings is that we want to be recognized.
All right, John, I'm going to give you a job right now.
All right.
I want you to look into that camera.
Okay.
And I want you to tell them what you want to leave them with. What do you want to tell these people?
I think just like, I would say this, is that each and every one of us is born with talents, part of our journey here on earth is to discover what those talents are. They're revealed to us throughout our lives. And to really use that to give to others and show kindness and compliment others, and also to experience and greet the happiness that other people's talents have when it's given to you.
Yep. We are not alone. You are not alone. This show is about understanding that people need people, man. And we need each other. And reaching out either through a book, through a talk, through a little stand out there at a market.
Front porch.
Front porch.
Yeah.
The whole idea of front porch. You today have been part of this community. You have been part of what we are about. Understanding that people have passions. They may not be the same as yours, but they're as important as yours. So, bottom line, give to each other, care for each other. John,
thank you so
pleasure
much
having
for
you
this
here, buddy.
opportunity, Vin.
I know
I appreciate it.
you had to come out of the way a little bit. We're glad you did.
It's my pleasure, and thank you for
our
the
pleasure.
opportunity.
Yep.
And I
Thank
appreciate
you
all
for
the good
being
work
here.
you're doing.
Yep. And thank you for tuning in. It is our absolute pleasure. You keep tuning in. We have a lot of passions coming your way. Thank you for being here today.